do, well, let's just say it's a CD round. Okay, CD round, or in the UK, it would be novice. We call it novice round. Okay. Or if it was an IGP, it would be a BH, or if it was an agility dog, can my dog ride a crate? It would be a 1 or 2, 1 or 2, depending on where you're at, or whatever the case may be. Whatever is your most basic entity, can my dog do this at home? So that's the environment that I've already established in my foundation training, that I have what I call home locations, okay? And I have away locations. Now, home locations are places that I can attend regularly, okay? My dog is comfortable with. Confident in. And this is the key one, I can control the variables to a degree, okay? Okay? Now, this is where it can sometimes get complex for those of you that are attending training facilities where people might not necessarily support or understand what you're aspiring to do. And that's really important when you're embarking on this endeavour of dog schools, is to find your people, find your tribe. Because if you don't have people that are going to help you in this stage of your dog's development, you'll never succeed. Okay? So, my home locations can be my home itself, it can be the park or location where I train regularly, it might be the training facility where I've gone since the dog was a puppy. So, my away locations, okay, and I've got 7 of these, are places where I can attend, okay, but not necessarily in the norm. So, for example, okay, my away locations would be, you know, a friend lives a couple of hours away, that's supportive of my endeavours, but I would probably unlikely that I attend that on a weekly basis, okay? Or it might be a club that's a little bit further afield, or somewhere where I don't attend. But again, I know that this environment is going to be one that I can have a level of control over. Oops, excuse me. Okay? But it's not the norm. Okay? For the dog, sorry. Okay? It's not the norm for the dog. It's not somewhere the dog knows particularly. So my first endeavour is, can the dog do it at home? Then I'm going to try and see if my dog can do this whatever it is, at one of these away locations. Okay? So that initially would be without ring furniture or ring slash competition pressure. Okay? So that means, can my dog go to in my garden or in my home, can it put the whole thing together? Fantastic, brilliant. Can it now do that at another one of my home locations? Over the park, where it's gone a million times before, can my dog do that? Brilliant. Can it do it at another one of those home locations? Fantastic, brilliant. My dog's smashing it, can do the thing in the home location. Now I'm going to test it. Can my dog do the thing? And I'm going to get my dog out of the car, play with it in my own sweet time, or saver, in a space that the dog hasn't been before. I'm going to put the whole thing together and see if the dog can do it. Right? Now, the ideal would be, if it's not always practicable, or practical I should say, is you would incorporate ring pressure into your home environments. So the club that you frequent since the dog was a dog, tiny puppy, you would add some ring pressure. That means formality. Okay? That means obviously the ring pressure itself, or judge pressure, or ring etiquette, etc., etc. Okay? So that means that you're now testing if your dog can do any of this stuff in your home location under formal situations. Right? Now, when I start to do that, the first check is, can the dog do it at home? Can it then do it away? Can it do it under a level of, can it do it formally? Can it add the ring pressure? Once I've got to that point, that will be now my baseline. Okay? The next step is, okay, my baseline. Okay? Now can my dog do that 1.5 times the requirement? Okay, can the dog do more than is required in competition? So now, I know that I can get my dog out and it can do this thing in either of these locations for this amount. Just think of how much confidence that's going to give you when you step into the formal environment, because you know your dog can do 1.5 times under formal conditions in a random location. Now's the time to think about competing. Alright? When you get to that point of competing, okay, now you've got to be thinking about being strategic. Depending on the type of dog that you have will dictate your training and your path to success. Okay? So, this is where, rightly or wrongly, other breeds versus sports-specific breeds, okay, really does make a difference. Okay? So, when you're strategically competing with your, for example, your borzoi, you are not going to be able to do it the same way that you would with your border collie. It is a different path. Okay? The reason being is that your borzoi needs to have its contract overviewed by 3 lawyers. It needs to know does it work Sundays, holidays, and what's it going to be paid for overtime. Your border collie doesn't really give a monkey's about that. This is a very broad brush I'm speaking with, but you understand there's a definite difference. So my path with my border collies can be very different to my path with my Mini Coon or my Boxer or my Labrador or whatever. Okay? It means that I have to be a lot more, I have to put a lot more money back in the bank with my other breeds, okay? And I need to be much more aware of criteria changes and reinforcement, because the chances are those dogs don't necessarily, and again it's a very generalised statement, that they may not have value for the work itself. They have to be trained to enjoy the work. Whereas if you have a dog that has an aptitude for the game, they will find the work itself reinforcing. That brings inside problems, but you're on slightly 2 different journeys. Alright? So, I've got to the point now of where my dog is trained, and then obviously you're progressing its education, which if you've done your foundation right, okay, this is the irony, okay, is actually progressing and teaching the dog the more complex skills with strong foundations is actually relatively easy. It's when you don't have strong foundations it makes the progression of teaching complex skills really hard. Okay? So, once you've got your dog in the midst of competing, then it's about going through the process of you are always in the midst of either maintenance, okay, progression, problem solving, okay, or progression, problem solving, or reacting. Okay? So maintenance is pretty obvious, okay? I'm maintaining my dog performance, which means I need to be reinforcing in the competition environment, and maintaining criteria. Okay? Progression is where I'm adding new skills and exercises. Okay? Problem solving, okay, is where in the midst of competing, okay, I'm unpacking, but actually it's showing me that there's gaps in my gaps, or you can get random issues crop up, okay, or any holes in my training, okay. Reacting is where you go through an event, something happens, you're in the midst of the season, okay, and it's not the time to necessarily fix it, okay? So you're papering over cracks. And sometimes that's the thing to do, because the problem might be too big to solve midway through the season, depending on where you're aspiring to. Alright? So the end goal, okay, is obviously to get closer to what we said to be that goal. Alright? Going through this process, okay, starts with what I said yesterday about being intentional about your competing and intentional about your So when you're talking about planning, etc., okay, it's really important that you take ownership of your dog's training and its career and its understanding. So let me just write this one out. Okay, by planning effectively. Okay? So, ways to plan effectively, okay, is to look at the life that you lead, okay, and work out what you do 24/7, 365, okay? And you need to put in that what are your priorities, okay? What are your limitations? What are your resources? Okay, and what are your commitments? Okay, and then within that, we need to also create life curveballs. Okay, so when you're planning, okay, and I talked about having everything in threes. Okay, I will have 3 light bulbs. Okay, 3 same type of toys. You know, I have numerous backboards, I'm not going to, but I have loads of backboards. But for example, 3 patent boards, okay? And I have them, the reason I have them in threes is one will be at home, in my living room, one will be by the back door, one will be my vehicle. Okay? So, that means I'm always ready to train. I don't have to get ready because I'm always ready. Okay? That means I can be efficiently using my time, and how I generally plan is when I have time manufacturers. This as well, okay? Where do I have time in my day to plan my training sessions? Normally, it's when I'm driving, okay? Or what I call my in-between gaps. So, for example, you know, my in-between is normally the gym I'll plan because the monotony of exercise is calming for me, so I will plan like my dog training in the gym. So if I'm on the treadmill, I'll be planning my training sessions for my dogs. So obviously in my head, and then I make that straight away in between sets in the gym, I'll be planning my training sessions. So that way when I get home, I know what my tripod is, I know how much time, and I'll factor out in my day, what does my day look like today? What have I got in my schedule? Have I got lessons? Have I got my commitments? Have I got Zooms? Where do I want to be? Where can I snatch time, and what can I do in that time? So if I had 5-minute training sessions, 15-minute training sessions, 30-minute training sessions, very, very rarely do I have 30 minutes beyond that. But let's just say 30 minutes plus, and I would very rarely get to meet that thing and train. So I have to, if it was with other people, that would be a luxury. Okay? Alright, so I need to be efficient use of my time. So, again, when you're talking about planning, look at places in your day where you can think about your training and then start to think about planning most of the training. Because then how you decide and determine what you're going to train will be based on your goal, or will be based on your aspirations, will be based on that what we discussed earlier about home, the way, what exercise do I need to teach, what foundation skills, okay? So obviously I have a lot of dogs, so I have to be incredibly efficient with my time. So, and obviously sometimes my schedule gets shifted if other things get, priority. So if you think about that when you're planning, you need to allow a little bit of give for life curveballs. You don't get injured, something happens, family stuff, blah, blah. That sometimes your training has to be put by the side. But if you have a really clear plan and you've journaled it or documented it, it's really easy to pick up the reins. Obviously I'm away a lot, so all my planning has to be factored around my trips away. That means I'm going to have a period of time where I'm not around my dogs. But now, in the midst of being here, I've got plans that I've got to work on my dogs. I've got things that I've got to work on. I've got things that I can be shooting for, obviously online stuff, and yada yada. So that's all bubbling away. And normally it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm making notes about what happened as well. Do whatever works for you. If it's notes on your phone, if it's a journal, have some sort of structure. Because as I said, it isn't something that naturally comes to me, but I'm making myself do it because it means I can be more efficient in my training. Alright? So when you plan your training training sessions, okay, what you, as I said yesterday, the big one is the Behaviours, think, plan, do, review. Think what you want to train, I'll do that at the gym, I'll plan my training sessions, again at the gym, I'll go and train the dog, and then I'll review it. Now I normally review my videos, I normally do them in the evening, okay, when I'm winding down as it were, I'll normally review my videos then. Sometimes I can do them straight after the training session, and if I have the luxury of time, I might be able to review it and then do another training session. If I don't, I'll train the dog, I've got some idea of what's going on, I'll review my videos, and then I'll plan my next training session. Okay, so make sure when you review, do it in a timely manner, okay, and be efficient. Okay. So, the big thing is obviously life's curveballs, and life's curveballs can be to both obviously personal stuff in relation to your dog. That doesn't mean, okay, and I've had that experience, that your end goal should necessarily change. You just might have to adjust your expectations. Sometimes, this goal that you have gets taken out of your hands. That's just the way the life works. But it's the pursuit of that goal that should really be the thing that is most rewarding and gratifying. Okay? Has anybody got any questions about that?
When you're doing your foundations, are you doing your whole foundations?
Yeah, so initially I do foundation training, obviously at my home. When I felt the dog was at an efficient level at home, then I would take it to one of my second or at home locations. So i.e. from my living room to my garden, from my garden to the local park where I go every single day more or less. From that location to another location I frequent regularly. So for example, I try to work out as much as I can 5 days a week. There's a space behind my gym which is perfect for training because it's a car park, flat surface, so it means all year round I can, because it's concrete, I know that I can train. And there's 2 grass sections, so I know that I can do grassy stuff as well. So what I will normally do, that would be one of my home locations that are different from my literal home. Does that make sense? Because I frequent that quite a lot, I can use that as the first checking point of whether my dog is ready to move on from that stage. So for example, my dog's doing a brilliant hand touch in my living room, brilliant hand touch in my kitchen, in my garden, fabulous. Let me go to the area behind my gym, can you do it there? And then that will be the first off-home location I go to. And the reason is because normally there's not a lot of people with dogs there, and it's quite quiet, it's quite secluded, so it's perfect for introducing my dog to the environment. But before I've done that, I've had the dog there, I played with it, and I've been to the streets, and I've just done fun stuff. So the dog has a level of classical conditioning that's occurred in that environment. So that's my first checking point. Yeah? Second place is my local park, which I frequent regularly, semi-regularly, to train my dogs, where they, again, they've been there. They don't generally walk there, I normally train or have clients there. So I know, again, if I have a client and I'm meeting them at that location, I will either stay after my lessons and train my dogs for a bit, or I will put a break in between, or a half an hour slot, obviously so I can let my dogs out, but also I can do a sneaky little training session. So again, it's just being efficient in your time, so that you can start to make increments moving forward. Yeah? Does that make sense to you? Yes?
When choosing your dog's first trial location, is it better to choose one that's home, if you have that option, or away?
I don't have any venues that would be, I can frequent my dogs, I can show you.
Yeah.
For example, obviously people that train here, you have trials here. I don't have that option. So my first attempt for dog complexity has to be at an away location. So hence why I would do all that preparation. So I would have taken the dog to meet up with some friends. Right, we're going to do a little mock event and run the dog through to see where I'm at.
But would you recommend, if you have the option, to do it here?
100%, absolutely. Like I did do that when my boxer did his BH. I went to it as you can. I went to the same venue and did it for several weeks beforehand because it's quite the accepted thing in that sport, but it's not in obedience. Like you wouldn't really be allowed to go. It wouldn't be the etiquette to go to the venue and train the dog at the venue, whereas the IGP is very much accepted. No. Yeah. So if you have the luxury, absolutely. If I had a dog here and I lived in Calgary and I trained here, absolutely my debut of anything would be in this hall. My dog goes, oh yeah, it's the same as training in my living room.
Yeah.
What if you usually go to the facility for another reason? For example, it's an agility hall and it has an obedience competition, but your dog is used to that facility being an agility hall.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all that arousal, all that back history of arousal with it.
Well, that's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, because I wouldn't want my dog to assume that he was going to make it was just going to
True.
do that would be a precursor, because I wouldn't want the environment to create the arousal. So I would train the dog that you're coming here, we don't, even though there's agility going on, there's not no agility. So the hope is that the dog isn't seeing the environment and getting high, so that I'm then having to peel off the ceilings. That would be the hope and the aspiration of how I train. So that hopefully wouldn't be a problem. So if I have a dog that I saw that happening, because I know what it will create an arousal monster, where the dog comes in here screaming his head off, banging like a wolf, and then does its run, and I'm just feeding into that arousal cycle, getting higher and higher. And what will happen over time is the dog will start to underperform because of its state of arousal. So preempting that, I would actively bring the dog in this environment, and we wouldn't do agility, so that I can keep the dog at an appropriate level of arousal. Yeah?
Yep.
Anybody else questions on planning and prep, etc.? So the underlying reason for this approach is, the hope is that when I step into competition, I feel that I've done everything I possibly can. Within the dogs are dogs. I feel that I've covered every single base. So that in itself will give me a level of confidence. Well, you know what, I've done everything I can, let the chips fall where they fall. Of course, like everybody, I get nervous and apprehensive, but my nerves are not based on, I don't know if you can do this. My nerves are, gosh, this is exciting, it's a new dog, let's see what it does. Or that little bit of adrenaline kicks in where you want to be competitive. That's a healthy state of apprehension and anxiety. Whereas if I'm worrying like, oh my god, there's a burger going and then there's a dog barking and then there's a toy over there and my dog's going to disconnect, that's one I don't want to step into competition environment with. Alright? Anybody questions?